Good afternoon, brethren. Today, I would like to talk about a simple 5-letter word. Simple in concept, but very profound and important in meaning. And that word is truth. There is much written in God's word about truth, and it's also about its opposite, lies. Pilate asked what it was when he asked the question, what is truth? And when you read it, you'll notice he asked that very sarcastically, because as soon as he asked it, he did not want an answer, he just walked away. Truth is even mentioned in the 10 Commandments. The 9th commandment being, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbour. In simple terms, this means that what you say about a person must be truth. Later we will see that there are some qualifications to this, but definitely you must not lie about anyone. So what does truth mean? What is the definition of it? The quality of being true, genuine, actual or factual, a proven or verified principle or statement, honesty, reliability, and faithful. All very positive words. It is something that is true as opposed to being false. Many of these points are listed in God's word. In fact, the Gospel of John, we read in John chapter 17 verse 17, John chapter 17 verse 17, sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. So the Bible is God's truth to us for our benefit. And Jesus Christ said of himself in John chapter 14 verse 6, John chapter 14 verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. There is even a passage in which it says that it is impossible for God to lie. That's in Hebrews 6:18, which you can look up later. We note that Jesus Christ is not just truth, he is not just a truth, but he uses a definite article, the truth. In other words, he defines what is truth. These statements give us great confidence that we can trust and rely both on God and his word and rely on Jesus Christ. He said in John chapter 18 verses 31 to 32, John chapter 8 verses 31 to 32, then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Think of the freedom of being truthful that what it brings. When a person tells a lie, it is usually for vanity, or to cover up wrongdoing, or some kind of advantage, financially or otherwise. And after the first lie, it becomes easier to tell the next lie, and possibly bigger ones to cover up the previous lies, lie upon lie. An extreme example was Nick Leeson, a former derivatives trader employed by Barings Merchant Bank. He began by speculating on the Singapore stock market, and for a start he made huge profits, millions of dollars for the bank, and of course that made them very happy. But then he started making losses. He was making losses with the bank's money, but he did not want to admit it, so he lied about it. And he tried to make more investments to make up for his losses. And of course, this put his employer deeper and deeper into loss, as these investments also failed. He lied to cover his previous lies, he forged documents, he misled auditors, and finally was arrested and jailed for 4 years. His debts amounted to $1.3 billion, which sent his employer, Barings Bank, bankrupt. Now this is a big problem with lying. You have to remember what your previous lies were, so as not to be caught out. Think of the contrast with always telling the truth. You don't have to make up stories or deceive. It certainly brings freedom and peace of mind, because the truth today is the same as the truth tomorrow. What does God say about lying and deception and deceitfulness? There is a very interesting proverb, namely Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 to 19. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 to 19. It is often used to describe those who cause discord among brethren, but there is also another great emphasis in this passage. Reading this particular segment of Proverbs, there are 6 things the Lord hates. Now, of course, when God says he hates something, that's a pretty strong word. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. An even stronger word that God uses in this case. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. As stated previously, these verses are sometimes quoted with the emphasis of sowing discord among brethren. But it will be noticed that in these verses, lying is mentioned twice, showing how much God hates it. A lying tongue and a false witness who speaks lies. When you think about the trial of Jesus Christ, we read that many bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. Their testimonies were based on lies, they were not based on truth. If they had been based on truth, they would have agreed, but since they were making up lies, they didn't agree. They were lying to get Jesus Christ condemned to death. This is probably the worst example of false witnessing. What about the punishment for bearing false witness in a trial? What does God say about that in his law? Well, we read this in Deuteronomy chapter 19, verses 16 to 19. That's Deuteronomy chapter 19, verses 16 to 19. It's interesting in this regard. If a false witness rises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. And the judges shall make a careful inquiry. And indeed, if the witness is a false witness who has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil from among you. Now think of this in a murder case. If a witness falsely testified that a man was guilty of murder and then was found out, that witness would be put to death according to this law. That's how seriously God considers the practice of being a false witness. It certainly would be a deterrent for bearing false witness in actual court cases. If you knew what the penalty was going to be, then you'd be very wary to bear false witness. Many are willing to lie because of vanity. They want to be thought of more highly than is proper. They exaggerate to receive praise. Or they lie to avoid punishment, or to cover up failure. What we should fear is sin. After all, if God is for us, who can be against us? When we are truthful, God will praise us, and his praise is worth so much more than that of any man. There are a couple of passages where God criticises people for not being valiant for the truth, or not having a love of the truth. So to please God, we should be valiant for the truth, and have a love for it, to embrace it, to hold it tightly. As I mentioned, there are qualifications to saying all that is true. Is this a contradiction? No, not when it comes to gossip. While we must never bear false witness against any person, there are often times when we should not tell all the truth about a person either. A long-time evangelist in the church, a very long time, had 3 personal rules about gossip. His first rule was, Is what I'm about to say true? Do I have the facts? If not, then I might be bearing false witness. His second rule was, can I tell this in the presence of the person involved? In other words, if I cannot say something in the presence of the person the information is about, then I should not say it in his absence, even if it is true. Remember, love covers a multitude of sins, and if we have love, we will not spread gossip. His third rule was, will saying this do any good, or is it just to elevate the self? What is the purpose of spreading gossip? So this is one area where we should not tell all the truth. Remember, what we say must be truth, and we must never bear false witness. But we do not have to say everything we know. This takes self-control, because sometimes telling some juicy truth about a person to elevate ourselves is enjoyable. But no, we must not say things at the expense of another person. God even gives us a warning that sometimes truth will fail. Now, where does it say that? Truth will fail. In Isaiah chapter 59, verses 14 and 15. Isaiah chapter 59, verses 14 and 15. Justice is turned back, and righteousness stands afar off, for truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. So truth fails, and he who departs from evil makes himself a prey. Truth will become hard to find. Making himself a prey can be counted as mad. That was what I found in 2 commentaries that I looked at. So if you don't follow a multitude to do evil, which is another of God's commands, you would be considered mad. Departing from evil includes speaking truth, and this sometimes would make us hated. In this day, many people do not want to hear the truth. During the recent pandemic, those who spoke truth about that subject were ostracised, and some doctors lost their medical licence for speaking and acting on the truth. They were not allowed to treat people according to their best interests. They had to treat people according to the government narrative, and if they didn't, they could be sacked. According to recently released US government documents, after a Freedom of Information request, those who spoke against the official narrative in the recent pandemic, that is, they spoke the truth, they were called domestic violent extremists by the then existing administration in the US. So to speak truth, they were condemned. They were basically called mad, spreading misinformation, disinformation or malinformation. But if we want to be developing God's character, which includes always being truthful, that this is something we must be aware of. As we can trust God, can we similarly be trusted? If we are always truthful, then we can be trusted. If we lie even slightly, then our trustworthiness must come into question. So God holds truth so important that he says all liars will have their part in the lake of fire. So in order to please God, we must never be a false witness. Never be a false witness, and always be people of the truth, not people of the lie. We must love and be valiant for the truth.